I see this mistake made all the time. People say, well, I'm a great seminar person. I had 10 people come in. How many are clients? One? Well, that's not a great ratio. Well, I did all the right things in my appointments and all that. Well, you may have, but it's what you did back there. It's about, did you create urgency? Did you move them off center? Were you able to connect with them?
We've got one that, well, I've been looking forward to for a long time because I feel like I've got a fellow storytelling ally in Gary Reed, founder of Master Advisor Coaching and a former financial advisor himself with a still functioning practice that your daughters run.
Yes, they do. Very well.
Very well. And where are you based?
Based out of Gwinnett County, over Suwanee. And
okay, so down in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, Atlanta area.
But the reason we brought you in here isn't necessarily because we want to know about our 401ks personally, but I'll
Right.
save that for after. But is the coaching element of what you do now in this sort of second act of your life kind of thing.
Yes.
And one of those things is hammering seminars and watching advisors and making sure that they get better. What I want to know first and foremost is why do you do what you do?
Well, I should at least tell you my why statement, right?
Please.
I love working with advisors. I mean, I was in the field forever. I did in-home sales. I mean, I did a little bit of everything out there. But I've done a lot of workshops, a lot of seminars out there. And then I realized that, there's a missing link out there where, people are doing mailings, spending a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money in restaurants, but nobody's watching what they're doing. Nobody's auditing, getting in the trenches with the advisors and videoing what they're doing so that they can constructively help them go the right direction, have them feel the right feelings, make sure that they don't sell, that they tell, all that sort of thing. And if they're not being watched, not being helped, they can get off track pretty easily.
So the services that you kind of provide are multifaceted, but
Yes.
One thing that jumps out to me is from the seminar presentation standpoint of creating that why statement and having a really, really strong introduction to your seminar.
Yes.
And that presence. Break down for me that why statement, because I've heard a lot of what you've talked about is very similar to what I talk about in the video world when I'm sitting down with advisors about telling their story and that why. So
Yes.
Why is the why so important?
You have the old saying is you have a few seconds to make a first impression when you're in front of an audience. And what happens, a lot of advisors talk about what they do, how they do it, what they do, but they don't talk about who they are. You see, people that come in there are just like us. They want to know who you are before they want to know what you do. So what I try to do is work with advisors so they can marry their personal stuff, which is what they love. I mean, they talk about their children, their family, and they glow. And the audience sees that, and it reduces that. It takes that invisible force field down so that trust factor can start to take over. And so that's so important that they not only talk about what they do, but they also talk about why they do it and who they are, which makes them want to help them be much better off in their retirement.
I won't ask you about what the perfect why statement is because I think that kind of gets into every advisor is different, so there's no
Correct.
perfect why. But what does a great why statement look like for an advisor?
I think it looks like, they talk about, for example, they say I'm with, Reed Financial Group or whatever that might be. And then they say, but let me tell you a little bit about me and why I do what I do. Because I think that's important for you to know who I am before we talk about all the things that we can do to help you and your family. And so you talk about who you are, your children, your family, where you're from. For example, I'm originally from Maine. So I tell them that I'm from lobster land. Some of you have heard of our pet lobsters up there. And, but I talk about, how when I grew up, I was on the volunteer fire department, and my dad was a fire chief, and my mom was a president of Ladies Auxiliary. So I'm telling them about me, the audience about me, so that they can kind of know who I am and where I come from. And it's all about helping people. That's what they did their whole lives. My parents were great role models. But the problem is my dad was a school bus contractor, and he never did the 401k. So when they retired, they weren't okay. So they struggled. And that's the last thing I want to ever have happen is good people to struggle when they really shouldn't have to. And it's just all about planning.
Something that you say about the why statement is you need to be able to marry the personal with your business.
Correct.
what kind of why can I ask why?
Well,
That'd be my why
sure,
statement.
sure. Because they also need to know not only who you are, but what and why you do it, but they need to know your firm. I mean, like Reed Financial Group, we've been like number one in our county for the last 9 years in a row. And we really, it's a family business. My daughters work with it. So when you marry the personal with the business, you have to have the credibility on the business part because they want to know you're legit.
Oh yeah.
And they want to know can they check you out?
Yep.
Where Ed Slott Advisors, he's on on public TV all the time and so forth. So, we're holistic in the way that we approach things, both personally and professionally. And we're going to make sure that we do what's in your best interest. We don't just sell products. We make sure that we solve problems if you have them and make sure you're going to be okay the rest of your life.
I want to ask you about a real life example about a why statement in an intro specifically, but I'm not going to put you on the spot. So
Okay.
I'll have one that I want to give,
Please.
and that'll give you time. So I was just at an advisor's office on the West Coast, and it was a woman run practice, and her son was starting to get into the fold. And I watched their seminar, and she's the keynote speaker. She's the main attraction. Her son gives the first little introduction, and he tees up sort of the sub-advisor, and he says, this woman is near and dear to our practice. We've known her a long time. She was actually my 6th grade teacher. And then she comes up and she gives this teaching backstory about how she used to be a teacher and now she does this. And it was a light bulb moment for me learning that kind of relationship in their office.
Yes.
Because it was, they're teachers. And education was so important to their practice and how they approach things.
Right.
And then the mom gets up. And then it has this momentum of, this person knows this person and this person is connected and education is so important.
Sure.
And I thought that was a really strong introduction to what ended up being
Sure.
a very, very good seminar.
Exactly.
What stands out? What do you like in an introduction? What's a great example of an introduction that really sets the tone for a great seminar?
Well, I think you have to set expectations with the audience as well. So, there's a lot of housekeeping that has to be done.
Yeah.
It's going to be this long, and you get your folder, and
yeah.
The evaluation form is critical as you go throughout your workshop. So I think you've got to set the stage. You've got to create, you've got to talk about you personally. You got to talk about why you do what you do. And then you've got to really give the credibility for the firm. And it's different with each advisor because you don't have that, like you had, a transitional type of thing sometimes available. Yeah. Some people have people introduce them. Some people just don't. They just walk up and just tell people who they are. So I just think that, it's so important that you really grab their attention at the very beginning. And so how I do that, and what I teach, I say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Gary Reed. I'm the president of Reed Financial Group. It's great to have you here. And I know how many people have been here before, and all the hands go up. So you didn't come just to see me, keep it kind of light.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that. But let's before we get into the stuff, let me tell you a little bit about me and what qualifies me to be here in front of you today and why I'm excited to get to know each and every one of you. And then I tell them my story. And then we talk about Reed Financial Group and how long we've been around, decades we've been doing this, best of Gwinnett, all that sort of thing. And then, of course, when you're going through the folder, doing all, that's where you're making sure that they've got their, their food order. They've got, you tell them what you're going to go over and so forth. And I'll be referring to this a lot tonight. So if I hold it up and I'll point to it, that'll tell you where we are, and you might want to make a note here and there to make sure that we get any follow-up information that you might need. But you got to grab them right from the beginning.
Yep.
And a lot of that is not just what you say, but the voice inflections you use. One of the things that I work with and look for are, emotions. I want people to be able to show the emotions, and I want them to be able to command the audience. You don't want to be just looking down at your notes the whole time. I talk about the triangle, looking over here, looking over there, looking over there, because it's critical, in my opinion, to make sure that everybody in the audience thinks you're talking to them. You've heard that obviously before.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've trained that with your videos. But I mean, that it's just really, really, and it's hard to say what's going to be the best way to do it for any one individual, because you hear the DNA of advisors, right?
Yep.
But everybody's a little bit different, and they might not be able to pull it off like I do it or like you do it. So we got to find their talents, their God-given talents, and make sure that we definitely utilize those to grab the audience to get this thing kicked off in the right direction.
Unfortunately, not every advisor is funny.
No.
An unfortunate reality.
True.
Some of them know it, some of them don't. That's for another day. But to the advisor that isn't the jovial, just stand up open mic night guy that's going to command a room in that form. What do you say to maybe the more reserved advisor that is comfortable public speaking, but isn't necessarily going to start cracking jokes? Is there a different recipe?
Yeah, there is a different recipe because not everybody has to be a jokester to be very good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met advisors who I thought they could use a personality transplant. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot there, but they were hugely successful.
Yeah.
Because they do what they do well and they stay within what they can do to the best of their ability. Where I think it goes south is when they try to be something they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I work on what they can do and I help them do it a little bit better, potentially, with voice inflections, maybe walking around the room, not just standing in one place like a wooden soldier, you know? So I help them try to expand what they do well, but and make it a little bit more than what it is right now. And sometimes you can't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
You just got to make sure your content and the way they deliver it's good,
Yeah.
and so forth. And sometimes that's okay because you have a lot of different people in that audience. You've got engineers, you've got teachers, you've got firefighters, police. I mean, you got every walk of life out there in the audience, and everybody's sitting there thinking, "What are they going to try to sell me today?"
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, if we're being forthright about it, they're thinking they made a pact on the way over there. We're not going to buy anything today. We're not going to sign up for anything today. Yeah. Next thing you know, they're signing up to come in and see you, and they go, "What happened?" Well, you know, we hit something that you wanted to talk about.
You just got finished talking to our team of sales VPs about this very same stuff. And one thing that you said was your introduction's not a formality, that you can't have a weak introduction. You can't just assume that it's going to go well and that they're hooked because they're there.
Right.
That's not enough. And then conversely, the outro is not a given. That is a really important moment when you finish up and you don't want to whimper to the finish line. So what's your advice for a strong outro?
You have to move them off center. You have to create urgency. Just having them come into the office for a cup of coffee, just because they kind of like you, is not really the ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. The ultimate goal is to help them maybe think in a different way. For example, I talk about, lazy money. Lazy money is something like a CD or, a money market. It's just sitting there and they're losing purchasing power, but they think it's really good because it's safe, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how safe is it if they're losing purchasing power? And I have a chart that I show that they can lose as much as $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 over the years by keeping it safe. So there are alternative vehicles that they can utilize where it can still be principal protected, but can also do growth and can income and all these other things as well. So really, it's this lazy money, and I've got a whiteboard that talks about it being like almost diseased. But I mean, you got to get the emotion in there and use voice inflections like lazy money. You just can't say lazy money. I mean, so a lot of it's the way you say it and the way you project it out to the audience, in my opinion.
So you've got the term lazy money. I love that. Love the connotation that it stirs up. But is that a rhetorical question that you're asking the audience to kind of get them off center?
Yes.
To ask them about?
Yes, because they don't realize that safe money is lazy. And I even had one of my own clients that come, and I always like to invite a client or two to each workshop I do.
Okay.
Because people like to talk to him. And he came up to me after the workshop and I talked about lazy money. And he said, "Gary, I've got some of that." I said, "You've got what?" He said, "Lazy money. I've got over 100,000 in my checking account. I got to do something about it. It's lazy." Because one of the things that I say is this money has retired more than you have. And they hate that.
There it is.
They hate that. So, I'm moving them off center. That's one point that they might say, I want to see what he's talking about with alternatives for lazy money because he's right. I'm losing purchasing power. So, just that's one thing I might suggest that they talk about.
You touched on this a little bit, and so you're from Maine, I'm from Connecticut. We both agreed that there's a bluntness about people from the Northeast, and you mentioned that when people go to your seminar, they've got they got their pact with their significant other. Hey, we're gonna host right. because we think someone's gonna sell us something.
Right.
Well, with that same mindset, that close, you say that's where the money is. Yeah, that's very blunt, but that's the fact of the matter is. So how does an advisor, is that a mindset shift for an advisor to approach it that way?
It is, and then I teach them a series of analogies, stories to help them paint the picture as we're going to, getting them to sign up to come in and see you. And, I make it, it's not an appointment. An appointment is when you go to the doctor,
Yep.
Or you buy something. And we do a discovery session, strategy session, very non-threatening. It would take about an hour, maybe, an hour, 15 minutes if we need it like that, to go over everything and give them a second opinion. I mean, I do a doctor analogy where I talk about a second opinion. I do an angry tweet close where I talk about the social media moving at the speed of light. If you don't have a proactive retirement account, you could lose money in a millisecond, meaning that prepared properly with the right risk values instilled in there based on what you want and so forth. So, there's an awful lot of different stories that I tell in chronological order. And then I go into the close and I talk about, procrastination. And I talk, it's procrastination to get around to it. Kind of like I talked about earlier about the nuggets. We get nuggets as advisors and we throw them in our nugget basket and we need to get them out and use them. So, I think using those stories and being relevant, for example, it's selection year. Does that make anybody nervous about the future of your retirement? And they all go, oh, yeah, sure it does. So I understand. So, now would be an ideal time for us to sit down and maybe give you a perspective. I mean, most people have, 1, 2, 3 doctors. Where is it set in stone? You can only have one advisor. I mean, what if I have an eye that's trained to see things other people don't see? And what if I see something that they don't and you have a chink in your retirement armor? If you do, when would you want to know about it? So these are the things that I do at the end to create urgency, to create need. I look at their evaluation sheet. And if I did it right and trained them right going throughout, they've circled a bunch of stuff. And looking down going, and I say, if you circle even one thing, it makes probably sense to get together. They look down, they've circled 5 or 6. I go, oh boy, we probably need to go see Gary. So these are things that I teach that can move them off center, make them feel like, hey, we probably should go take advantage of this.
You mentioned teaching in your course that you do and what your services that you provide other financial advisors. And you mentioned the nugget implementation and it can feel at times for an advisor when they sit down with you or when they sit down with anybody that's trying to coach them up that it's drinking from a fire hose.
Yes.
And your dad was a firefighter.
Yes, definitely.
I can't imagine it's a whole lot of fun trying to drink from a fire hose and then get that and enact all of those new ideas. So what do you suggest for an advisor that's getting all these new ideas to put into their seminar?
Get a coach and make sure that they help you segment it as it makes sense to do so.
Kind of trickle these new ideas in.
Trickle it in. You want to make sure the two areas, the intro and the outro, are solid.
Yeah.
And then you work on what those components mean, and then you go ahead and you'll polish them up for them as they can grasp it and how quick they can grasp it. But you don't just throw it all in there at once, because then it's like having 5 cooks in the kitchen.
Oh, another great analogy.
Not gonna work.
So, rhetorical questions, analogies. Give me your elevator pitch on analogies for an advisor, because I know that a sports analogy. I love sports. Mm-hmm. You're a former wrestling coach. You love sports as an analogy. Not every advisor is funny. Not every advisor is sports inclined.
Right.
So where do you recommend getting the right analogy for an advisor to use in their presentation?
Well, the right analogy is kind of like a theme analogy. It's like different things along the way on the workshop that all kind of culminate at the end to a crescendo, like a good play, like a good movie, that sort of thing. So it's really little things that they say, little sprinkles of seasoning here and there throughout the seminar that they would utilize, and the analogies are something that they can relate to. Maybe they were a policeman, maybe they were in manufacturing. They could do something about manufacturing. You could talk about you want it to be relevant. You want it to be here and now.
Yep.
If you've been doing this for a while, or a hot minute, as they say these days.
The kids are saying it.
Right.
The kids are saying it.
Then you might be talking about stuff that's 10 years old.
Dated.
Dated. Be relevant. I mean, use that as an ex-history teacher. So you use that to set the tone, but don't stay in the past, because it's the future they're worried about.
Before we get into that, I want to do the right seminar mindset. Okay. And something that you said in the other room with our sales VPs was an advisor can get 10 first appointments, and then the drop off is that second appointment, and they can say, it's just, that was just that second appointment.
Right.
And you say, not so fast. That could be bleed over from your seminar because you did not create the right mindset.
Exactly. I see this mistake made all the time.
Yeah.
People say, well, I'm a great seminar person. I had 10 people come in. How many are clients? One? Well, that's not a great ratio. So I don't know that I did all the right things in my appointments and all that. Well, you may have, but it's what you did back there. It's how you built your base. It's how you built your home. It's how you built your relationship. It's about, did you create urgency? Did you move them off center? Were you able to connect with them? Were you able to have them see themselves 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, and how certain things now can make a huge difference in you getting there and being having the retirement you want?
People are creatures of habit.
Yes.
There are financial advisors that have been doing this for a hot minute, as the
Yep.
kids are
Oh,
still
yeah.
saying. And they're kind of stuck in their ways. And I do my seminar my way. It's worked for me this far. I've had success. Why would I change it? What do you say to the advisor that is stuck in that mindset of, I'm doing what I've always done?
Well, if you're doing what you've always done, you'll be where you've always been. And where do you want to be? I mean, if you're happy with where you are and what you're doing, then we probably don't need to talk. But if you want to go to maybe a next level, maybe be more efficient, have more fun, enjoy your clients more, and maybe your closing ratio go up about 25%, then, we could talk. There's little things that I don't have to change who you are to help you be much better than you are, if that makes sense at all.
It does. It does. And I think it's a little change, but you got to start somewhere. And when you spoke about nugget implementation, you don't want to get overwhelmed and try and put 7 new things into your seminar. I mean, it's going to make for a really disjointed seminar.
Exactly. And if you're a veteran, you've been doing it a long time, sometimes you just like to freshen it up. You know what I mean? Do something a little different, but still be successful. And so that's also important. Plus, we're all in this together. It doesn't ever hurt to have a checkup to make sure that you're still doing the great things you always did before. That I know that I talk to advisors all the time, and I'll say something, and they'll say, I used to do that, and it worked great. I don't know why I stopped.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you just need to go back, drink at the well, make sure the fundamentals are sound. Maybe you got a couple of new little tweaks. It's like, do you want to watch the same movie over and over and over again? Or do you want to see maybe a sequel?
I want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about the services that you provide with Master Advisor Coaching and the drink at the well and all that jazz. But what jumps out to me when I talk to you, we had our initial call, when I listened to you in the other room, and when I'm talking to you now, is how much you care. And you had a nifty little line that was something. People don't know how much you care until you care. What is it? I'm going to butcher it.
If you care, you share.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your passion for helping other advisors is, it jumps out
I'm glad
right
you
away.
noticed. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think it makes a real big difference when you probably sit down with an advisor because you care, but you can't care more than them.
Right. And I tell people, that's a good point. And I tell them, if I want this more for you than you want it for yourself, it's not going to work. Because then I'm going to be doing all the heavy lifting, and you're not going to be my partner in this. So we got to really want this together. You got to tell me, I don't want to I don't want you to even join the coaching program unless you're serious.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get as much out of it. And so, that the key is I love making a difference. I love having an advisor come to me and say, Gary, I was at, 1.3 million. I finished the year at 10 million. You had a lot to do with that because of the fundamentals that you shared with me on that I could utilize and make it my own. Because I think everybody's got to do it their way, but they've got to do it fundamentally sound. When you stray from fundamentals, bad things happen. And there are fundamentals in every seminar. I don't care what kind it is. You can do the Mr. Rogers seminar. I don't care which one you do. But if you are not fundamentally sound, you're not going to be as successful as you could be. And you don't just do yourself a disservice. You do the audience that came there that you might not connect with and they needed to, because they might lose that retirement account because you didn't connect with them enough to be able to get them to come in and see you and make a difference. So I think we owe it to the audience to be our very best.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Impactful Conversations. We hope you picked up on something, and we hope you stick around. Like and subscribe to stay up on the latest content from our YouTube channel. We've got house rules if maybe your marketing needs a boost, or if you need some more creative ways to talk to clients and prospects. Selling with Stories can be a great resource for that as well. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.